Good morning, everybody. Today we are going to be changing the drive belt on my 2007 Victory Vegas here. This is the original drive belt. I bought this bike new. It has about 91,000 kilometers on it. It doesn't look like it's in bad shape, but I'm starting to get the feeling that I'm pushing my luck. So we're going to change this thing today. So I'm sure with all the proper tools and the proper amount of cussing, this shouldn't be too bad to do. We're going to have to remove this sprocket guard and remove this chain guard, which at the moment I don't think is too onerous, although famous last words. But I know looking down in here, that's a bracket that holds my exhaust and it's in the way. So I will have to disconnect that and then basically shove the tire forward, pull the belt off, and should be good in theory. I guess we'll find out how well theory holds up here. Let's get to it. Alright, so to get started, what you want to do is grab yourself a 5mm Allen wrench or hex key, whatever you want to call it, and basically it should just slide in here and you can take these bad boys off. Now there's one right down in here and my exhaust is actually in the way, but I'm thinking I can sneak this wrench in there and get that off. Guess we're going to find out here. So on a good note, they're not super tight to begin with, which makes me wonder why they haven't kind of fallen out on their own. Oh, that's because they're rubber. They've got a rubber gasket or a rubber washer in them there. Very smart. Okay, so we got this front chain guard out of the way. Now the next one is to get this back, not a chain guard, a belt guard, I guess. So there's a bolt here that's easy to get at. It's a 10mm. Sockets are great. There's another point it's attached to. It's actually around the back here. I'm going to have to access it through the other side, through my wheel, to get at that. Now, for those of you who don't have a good socket set, go buy one. I've got 3 extenders, a large, a medium, and a small, and I'm going to have to use all 3 of them to get at that thing from the other side. However, shouldn't be a big deal, but me and Murphy's Law just never get along, so let's see how well this works. If you ever do buy a set of sockets, I didn't even see the whole thing on my screen there, but a good set of sockets, you should be able to reach down near 2 feet with your extenders. So on a good note, it didn't actually take all that much swearing to get at those. Just be careful when you get your bolts out of there. Fortunately for me, if I drop them, they end up on the floor, but things have a habit of going missing when I drop them. Now, the passenger foot peg. So I might just have to take that off as well. In fact, that's probably going to make life easier. Let's take off the passenger foot peg. Alright, so to get this passenger foot peg off, it shouldn't be too difficult. Just pop off this panel. Now you should need a hex wrench. I've got socket-based ones that fit right in there just like that. So on jobs like this, sockets are going to be a real benefit. All right. That wasn't too nasty at all. I always like to put the bolts with the parts I'm on there, although all these bolts look different as you go through things. Sometimes bolts look the same or your memory isn't that great. This way you know where they go. Now, this guy should just come right out of there like that. Look at that. Almost have full access to the belt. Now, this one's going to be fun. Oh well, I don't think I've ever worked on anything that wasn't quote unquote fun. Alright, so what we're going to do now is get this bracket at least out of the way enough to get that belt off of there. 17 mil wrench. This is an American made bike, but it is metric. Of course, being Canadian, I'm used to metric for the most part, but I am actually impressed that they went metric with this bike. All right, let's get that out of the way. Now, I know I'm gonna have to take off some more. Let's see what else we got under here. So this is the other end of the bracket here. It's actually not a nut, but it's a hex bolt. It's 8 millimeters. So you just got to take that off, and then the exhaust bracket should be out of the way. Okay, so because the exhaust is rigid, just loosening these ones, I can't move the exhaust out of the way. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to undo these two bolts in here and basically just try and get that bracket out of there, because the exhaust should be out of the way enough on its own if I can remove this bracket. Okay, so I think I got all the bolts out of that thing. Now if we can ever so gently just take that bad boy out of there. Actually, that wasn't too god-awful at all. Now, let's just take a quick look in here. I do believe, I'm hoping this guard won't be a big issue here, but I do believe we should be able to freely get that belt out of there. So what I'm going to do next is I'm going to loosen the back tire and move it forward to take the tension off that belt, and then put the new one on. That almost seems too simple. I'm sure something will blow up in my face. Give me a few minutes. Alright, so our next bit of fun is I got to loosen the back tire. That's what this big nut up here is for. You loosen that off, I should be able to slide the tire forward and get the tension off that belt. Now, that is a 1 1/16 inch nut, and I do happen to have a giant wrench that size. It is probably metric, but there are places where metric and imperial do line up. Fortunately for me, this happens to be one of them. All right, let the good times roll. Okay, so I've loosened that big nut off. Now I haven't taken it off because I don't want to pull the whole axle out. Now the next thing with these bikes is they do have an adjustment here. And you'll see that there's a bolt here on either side. And what that does is it moves the tire forward or backward, depending on which way you turn it, to put tension on the belt and to keep the tire straight. Alright, so I've loosened those nuts off and shoved the back tire forward, and you can see now I have lots of slack in that belt. I don't know if I have enough. I might have to go a little bit more. But let's see if we can't get that guy off of there. Alright, so with a whole bunch of swearing, I got that front sprocket cover out of there. It's going to be interesting to put it back in. Now, based on that, I should be able to just pull this old belt right out of here. Of course, I got to get it by one bolt. That bolt. And to do that, pull the belt out like this so it's skinnier. Slide it by the bolt. Slide it on out. All right, old belt is off. So quick examination. There's a little bit of scarring on it. I mean, it's seen probably over 55,000 miles. 91,000 K. So I mean, it's got a bit of life left in it. I mean, I'm not going to say there's a lot, but I don't see any fraying on the sides. It's just what I would call regular wear and tear. So we have what I would call a decent spare belt just in case. Mind you, if I do take this thing apart, why would I put a used belt back on? I'm on all that effort, put a new belt on. However, that's besides the point. Now comes the fun part. Let's get the new one in there. All right, so here's the new one. It's all nice and shiny and black. The other one basically just has road grime on it. I just kind of held them up together, make sure they're roughly the same size. I mean, I trust my dealership. They've never steered me wrong, but you never know. Sometimes you get the wrong belt. But this one appears to be the right one. Now, is there a forward and a backward direction to it? I don't believe so. However, they got some writing on this edge here. I'm just going to make it so I can read that and assume that's right. Let's let the good times roll. That took all of about 3 seconds to get that new belt on there, which isn't a shock. I mean, the old one, once I got all the parts removed, came off easy. Now comes the fun part of how much swearing is it going to take to get this back on there. I guess there's one way to find out. Now, there is a rubber gasket here, which I actually took off to get it out of there because I didn't want to damage it. So once I get this in there, I'm going to have to get this little rubber gasket back on here. And I think I'll leave that till after because I don't want to damage it. It's not to prevent any kind of leaks. It's just because we're putting metal on metal. This way it won't shake loose as easily anyway. Of course, I messed around with this so long, I can't remember how I actually got it out. Well, I'll be damned. That was about the easiest thing I've done today. Huh. That's rather surprising. So I'm just going to let that sit there for the moment because I think what I'll do is I'll tension this belt up first because it's kind of in the way when it's this loose. So when you're putting this back together, sometimes it's a good idea to put a little thread lock on it. Now this is a medium strength one. There are stronger ones than this, but they require heat in order to break the bond, and I think that's just a little too much because there's places in here I can't get a torch in, not to mention it'll bugger up the chrome. It is a V-twin, so you know it does have a little bit of a shake to it, but I think that's what gives it its soul. However, I don't want to be losing nuts and bolts when I'm going down the highway, so a little thread locker is always going to be a good friend of yours. Alright, I got all the little bits and pieces back on. I got the front sprocket guard, I've got the belt guard back here, I got the foot peg back on, got that bracket on, everything's all snugged up. All I gotta do now is adjust it and tighten up that back tire. And I'll have to take it for a little ride and probably adjust it again. But so far, that wasn't near as painful as I thought it was going to be, and I didn't even have to invent any new cuss words. Nothing wrong with that. Alright, so the new belt is on, and you'll see on both sides here I've got that middle mark sort of centered on that arrow. So the back tire should be approximately straight. Now, one thing to know about these belts is they do stretch. So you'll get it set, it'll stretch out, you'll have to readjust it. That's nothing new, that happens all the time. The other thing I've noticed about these bikes, now I don't have that fancy tool to adjust the tension on this bike. I just give her the old finger test. So it's snug. Now when you ride it and it warms up, this belt is going to tighten up. So you don't want to get it super tight right now. You know, there's some give to it. What I'll do is I'll probably go out for a series of short rides and adjust this, and then once I'm happy with it, we go to town. So it's on. I gotta wait for the rain to stop, and then I'm gonna, just ride around the block and get this thing adjusted. But That was far less painful than I anticipated. It took me less than 3 hours to do, and that's the first time I've ever done that. So with any luck, hopefully there's nothing rubbing on places it shouldn't be and things like that, but I guess we'll hear that when we start riding. So here's to a successful belt change.